Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for all your support. I hope you all are doing great. If you're new to my channel, you're welcome to my channel. Please subscribe. Today we'll be making this shirt dress. I'll show you how to draft it directly on your fabric and also how to sew it. This fabric is folded into two. This is for the front side of the dress. I have 2.5 inches for bottom plankets. 2.5 inches. The fabric is folded with her biggest measurement, which is her hip measurement. Her hip measurement is 40 divided by 4 is 10 inches. This is 2.5 inches bottom blanket plus quarter of her hip measurement, quarter of her biggest measurement, plus 2 inches seam allowance, but I have 3 inches seam allowance, but 2 inches seam allowance is fine. From shoulder to this line is chest line, 9 inches, half of her round armhole. From shoulder to this line is waistline, 16 inches. From shoulder to this line is her hip line, 24 inches. From shoulder to this line is the length of the dress, 39 inches, and 1.5 inches to hem it. I'm going to mark her shoulder measurement. Her shoulder measurement is 16. 16 divided by 2 is 8. But because I'm marking directly on the fabric, I'll add seam allowance. So I'll mark 8.5. So this is 8.5. This shoulder measurement, I'll come down by 1 inch for shoulder slant. I'm going to mark the neck width and the neck depth. I will use 2.5 inches for the neck width and 3 inches for the neck depth. I have video on how to draft shirt pattern. I'll link it in the description and also on the comment section. On that video, I used 3 inches by 3.5. But because I'm marking directly on my fabric, I used 2.5 by 3 inches. Because that video 3.5, when you add seam allowance ½ inch, it will come up to 3 inches. 3 inches, when you add seam allowance, it will come to 2.5. So because I'm marking directly on the fabric, I'm using 2.5 by 3 inches. I will connect this shoulder slant to the neck width. I'm going to take the measurements. All the measurements will start from this line. Quarter of her bust measurement. Her bust measurement is 38. 38 divided by 4 is 9.5 plus 1 inch for ease. You can use 1 inch for ease. You can use ½ inch for ease. You can use 0.75 for ease. Because I'm not going to add that to this dress. So 9.5 plus 1 inch for ease is 10.5. This is 10.5 plus 1 inch seam allowance. 1 inch seam allowance. Her waist measurement is 30. 30 divided by 4 is 7.5 plus 1 inch for ease is 8.5. 1 inch seam allowance plus 1 inch seam allowance. Her hip measurement is 40. Quarter of her hip measurement is 10 plus 1 inch for ease is 11 inches. And 1 inch seam allowance. So the measurement that I have here, I'll mark it at the lower part. (12 inches). I will connect it. So I'm going to connect the armhole. The measurement that I have here on the shoulder, I'll mark it here. I'll get the midpoint. I'll come in by 0.75. I'll connect the armhole. So to cut the neckline, I'll fold this in, this bottom blanket. This is for the front. I'll cut it into two. So this is for the front. I'll put it aside and cut the back. This is for the back. This is shoulder line. I have extra 2 inches on top here. From shoulder to this line is chest line. From shoulder to this line is waistline. From shoulder to this line is hip line. This is the length of the dress, and seam allowance 1.5 inches to hem it. So I'm going to mark the neck width of 2.5 and neck depth of 1/2 inch. 2.5 inches and 1/2 inch. I'll connect it. I'll mark her shoulder line. 16.5 inches divided by 2 is 8 inches plus 1/2 inch seam allowance, 8.5. Eight and a half. Here I'll come down by 1 inch for shoulder slant. I'll connect it to the neck width. I'll mark quarter of her bust measurement, 9.5 plus 1 inch for ease, 10.5, and 1 inch seam allowance. Quarter of her waist measurement, 7.5 plus 1 inch for ease, 8.5, and 1 inch seam allowance, 9.5. Quarter of her hip measurement is 10 inches plus 1 inch for ease, 11, and 1 inch seam allowance, 12 inches. The measurement that I have here, I'll mark the same at the lower part, 12 inches. If you want, you can curve your lower part, but you want hers this way. So now I'm going to curve the armhole, the midpoint, back armhole. I'm going to connect it. Because it's check dress, I will minus 1 inch from the front pattern and add it to the back pattern. To do that, because I'm marking directly on the fabric, I will extend this line by 1 inch and add seam allowance. This is the front pattern. I will minus 1 inch from the front pattern and add it to the back pattern. But because I'm marking directly on the fabric, I will minus ½ inch and use ½ inch for seam allowance. I've marked ½ inch and connect it. So I'm going to trim this ½ inch off, and remaining ½ inch I will use it for seam allowance to join the shoulder. So this is for the front. I'm going to extend the back neckline. So I'm going to extend this by 1½ inches. 1 inch and ½ inch seam allowance. Sorry, this fabric is folded into 2. So I've extended it to 1½ inches. 1½ inches, ½ inch is for seam allowance to join the shoulder. So now I'm going to cut it. I don't want yoke for this dress, but if you want yoke, what you do is to fold fabric and put under as if you're cutting facing. So you mark between 4½ inches, 5 inches and cut it out. So this is for the back. This is the sleeve that I'm going to use. It's basic sleeve. I have video on how to make basic sleeve. I'll link it in the description and also on the comment section. Her sleeve length is 10 inches, but I have 12 inches here. 1½ inches to fold it and ½ inch to sew it to the dress. So you will fold ½ inch in and 1 inch. You will stitch on it. After that, this is wrong side of the fabric. After stitching it, you will turn it this way. Her round sleeve is 15. 15 divided by 2, because the fabric is folded into 2, is 7½. You will measure 7½. This is 7½ and 1 inch for seam allowance. So from this 7½, you will sew it to this seam allowance here, this way, before you fix it on the dress. I will do the same on this. I want to sew the bottom plankets. I folded ½ inch in. I press it to the end. I'll fold it again and stitch on it. I have 2 inches left. These 2 inches, I'll fold it into 2 this way. I will stitch on it on the edge to the end. I'll do the same on this. So from this center line, I now have 1 inch for bottom planket, but I had 2½ inches. After folding it, I now left with 1 inch for bottom planket. So what I'll do next is to trim this off because I don't need it. I'll do the same on this. What I'll do next is to join the front and the back together at the shoulder line. This is right side of the fabric. Right side together. I'll join it with half inch seam allowance. I'll do the same on this side. I've stitched it. What I'll do next is to shape the side. If you want, you can fix your sleeve first. If you want, you can fix your sleeve first. After that, you will now shape it from the sleeve to the end of the dress, or you will shape it first. So I'm going to shape it. You can see this is not the shoulder because it's shirt dress. The back will fall to the front. It's not equal here. You will make it equal. Or at the lower part of the dress, not equal. So for you to shape the side, you will make it equal here at the lower part, so that you get the shoulder. And this is the shoulder. This is not the shoulder. This is the shoulder. You will notch this point. This is the shoulder. So you will now shape the dress using 1 inch seam allowance, because I have 1 inch seam allowance. I'll do the same on this side. I've stitched the two sides. After that, I turned it to the right side of the fabric and gave it a good press. This is the right side of the fabric. This is the shoulder line. This is the seam line. What I'll do next is to measure the neck circumference and cut out the collar. This bottom planket will overlap. You will measure it this way. I have 9 inches this way, or you will measure it like this. I have 18 inches. I'm going to use 18 inches to cut out the collar. This is collar stay, it's fabric hard stay. I'll fold it into 2. The measurement I'm working with is 18 inches. I'm going to fold the fabric into 2. Because the fabric is folded into 2, I'll divide 18 inches into 2. 18 inches is her neck circumference. So I'll divide it into 2. 18 divided by 2 is 9. So I'll fold it into 2. I have more than 9 inches. I'll mark 9 inches. This is 9 inches. So from this line, the edge, I'll go up by ½ inch. I'll go up by ½ inch. This is ½ inch. So on this side, the line is equal here. If it's not equal, I will have a line here, straight line, but it's equal. The fabric is equal. I will mark 2 inches or half of this. So I'll use half of this. This is 9 inches. Half of 9 inches is 4.5. This is 4.5. This is 4.5. So this ½ inch, I will slant it from this ½ inch to this 4.5. I'm going to mark the collar stand, the height, depending on how many inches that you want. You can use 1 inch, 1.25, 1.5, depending on what you want. So, but I'm going to use 1. This is 1 inch. One inch, 1 inch, from this line 1 inch up. One inch. I'll connect it. So this is the collar stand. So on this side, I'll curve it. From this line, I'll curve it to this line. So I'm going to cut it out. I'm going to cut it. This is the collar stand. I'll put it aside and cut the collar. I'm going to cut the collar. You make sure that this side is straight, it's equal. So mine is equal now because I trimmed it. So I will use 18 inches because it's folded into 2. Half of 18 is 9. I have more than 9. This is 9. I'll pin it. Nine inches. I want my collar to be 2.5. I will measure 2.5. Make sure that it's equal on this line. 2.5. This is 2.5 by 9 inches. So on this side, I'll come in by 1 inch. So this is 1 inch. From this 1 inch, I'll connect it to this point. So from the edge, I'll go up by ½ inch. So from this ½ inch, I'll connect it to this point. I'll slant it. If you want, you can connect it or you use the ruler this way. So this is the collar. I'll cut it. So this is the collar. Collar stand and collar. So I'll put it on top of fabric. This is wrong side of the fabric and this is the visible side. So I'll put it this way and press it on it, but I'll make sure that I have seam allowance because I'll add half-inch seam allowance all around it. Half-inch seam allowance. So I'll press it on it. So after adding the seam allowance, I'll put it on another fabric right side together and cut out another one. I'll have two of these. I'll do the same on the collar stand. This is the collar and this is collar stand. I have two of these. One with interfacing and one without. This is the right side of the fabric. I'll use this to cut out this. Right side together. I did the same on this. So on this side, I folded this half-inch in. The collar stand, I folded the half-inch on this side in. Now I'm going to sew this together. I've stitched it. I'll trim this side off. I'll turn it to the right side of the fabric. I'll press it. I want to sew the collar and the collar stand together. So this is the right side of the collar stand. This side is the side that I'll sew to the shirt, and this side I'll sew this collar to this side. This is the right side and right side of the collar. So I'll put it this way. This is the side with interfacing, is on top. So I'll put this on top this way. On this collar stand, this side is the side that I'll sew to the shirt. I folded half-inch in. So I'll put it this way. I'll go and stitch it. Before you stitch these three together, you make sure that the midpoints are together. You put the midpoint together, both collar and collar stand, the midpoint, before you now stitch it. I've stitched it, I notch it, and turn it to the right side and press it. I've pressed it. So now I'm going to sew it to the shirt. This is the right side of the fabric. This is the midpoint, the neck circumference. This is the midpoint. This is the collar. I'm going to stitch it to this. I'm going to stitch it to the dress. I'll stitch this side to the dress. This is the midpoint. I'll pin it together and stitch it. I've stitched it. I'll use this to cover this seam. I'll put it this way. And stitch on the edge. After that, I'll fix the sleeve. This is the right side of the sleeve, and this is the midpoint, the shoulder. This is wrong side of the fabric. I'll put it to the right side of the fabric. This is right side of the fabric. I'll pin it to the shoulder line. This is the shoulder line. I'll pin it. And stitch it. I'll do the same on this side. So I've sewn the collar. I also fix the sleeve. What I'll do next is to mark the button. To mark where I'll fix the button and buttonhole. I'll also hem the lower part. I'll fold ½ inch in because I have 1.5 inches. ½ inch in, then 1 inch. I will stitch on it. I want to mark the button and buttonhole. To mark the button, I'll get the bust line. Her bust point is 10 inches. This is 10 inches. So from this 10 inches, I'll mark 3.5. Another 3.5 and 3.5. So this is the bust point. From this bust point, 3.5, 3.5, 3.5 till where you want your button to stop. Buttonhole will be at the right side, and button will be at the left side. Please like, share and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.